Dr. Zexhai looked at the massive metal chamber in front of him. The room was as big as a small building. Pipes and wires covered every surface. Strange blue lights flickered along the walls. This was his life's work, the most dangerous simulation ever built. The Alterian scientist had spent 20 years creating death traps. Not real death traps, of course. These were computer simulations that could test how different alien species might survive on deadly planets. The Galactic Research Consortium paid him well to find out which species could live where. "Doctor, the new readings are ready," said Dr. Velnara. She was young for an Alterian, with bright purple skin and eager eyes. She had worked with Zexhai for 3 years now. She was smart, but sometimes too excited about dangerous things. Zexhai took the data pad from her thin fingers. The numbers made him smile. "Perfect. The Class 13 protocol is ready for testing." The Class 13 simulation was special. It was the deadliest environment they had ever created. The computer would build a world so terrible that nothing should be able to live there. The air would be poison. The ground would burn with acid. Creatures made of pure energy would hunt anything that moved. "How many species have we tested so far?" asked Quintel, the facility's biotechnician. He was a Zellan, short, and covered in gray fur. His people were known for keeping careful records. 47 species, Zexhai replied. "All dead within 10 minutes. Most died in under 2 minutes." The 3 scientists stood in the control room, looking down at the simulation chamber through thick glass windows. Inside the chamber, holographic projectors could create any environment they wanted. Temperature controls could make it hot enough to melt metal or cold enough to freeze air solid. Artificial gravity generators could crush visitors with pressure or make them float helplessly. "The Terran subjects arrive tomorrow," Velnara said. She was trying to sound casual, but Zexhai could hear the excitement in her voice. Terrans, humans, the newest species to join the Galactic Consortium. They came from a small blue planet called Earth. According to the files, it was just a classy 7 world. Not too dangerous, not too safe. Most species that reached space travel came from Class 5 or Class 6 worlds. "I read their files again last night," said Mordek, the team's data analyst. He was a Kef, tall and thin with 4 arms that moved constantly while he talked. "They seem very ordinary. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, no special organs for extreme environments." Zexhai nodded. "That's what makes them interesting. How did such a weak species develop space travel? Their homeworld seems too easy for them." The truth was, nobody really understood humans yet. They had appeared in space only 50 years ago. Their technology was strange but effective. Their ships were built like weapons, even the peaceful ones. Their soldiers were trained for combat in ways that confused other species, but they looked so fragile. Zexhai had seen pictures. Humans were tall and thin with soft skin and no visible natural defenses. They needed clothes to keep warm. They needed special equipment to breathe in different atmospheres. They seemed to need help with everything. "Maybe that's why they want to test our simulations," Velnara suggested. "They know they're weak, so they want to see how weak." "Or maybe," said Quintel slowly, "they want to see if our simulations are accurate." That was an interesting thought. The consortium's survival simulations were used by many species to train their people for dangerous missions. If the simulations were wrong, people could die on real missions. Zexhai walked to the main control panel. Hundreds of buttons and switches covered the surface. Each one controlled a different aspect of the simulation. He had memorized them all. "Let's review the Class 13 parameters one more time," he said. The main screen lit up with data. Temperature, range, -200 to +800 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure, 15 times normal. Air composition, 60% sulfur dioxide, 30% methane, 10% various toxic gases. Radiation levels, enough to kill most organic life in hours. Gravity, 3 times normal Earth gravity. And the active threats? Asked Velnara. Another screen showed moving shapes. 12 different predator types, all artificial but programmed with advanced hunting behaviors. The primary threat is a crystalline hunter, 15 feet tall, that can track life forms through electromagnetic signatures. Mordek's 4 arms moved faster. The mathematical probability of survival beyond 10 minutes is 0.003%. For most species, HFY corrected. We don't have enough data on humans yet. That was true. Humans were still too new to the galaxy. Most of what the consortium knew about them came from their own reports, and those reports seemed too good to be true. Humans claimed they could survive in environments that should kill them. They said their homeworld had trained them for harsh conditions. But Earth was only a Class 7 world. HFY had run simulations of Class 7 environments. They were challenging, but not deadly. Most species could survive there with basic equipment. The door to the control room slid open. Commander Amy Brooks walked in, followed by a human male in military uniform. Brooks was the human liaison to the consortium. She was middle-aged, with short gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. "Dr. HFY," she said with a slight bow. "Thank you for including us in your research." "Of course, Commander. Science benefits everyone." HFY looked at the uniformed human. "Is this one of our test subjects?" "This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison," Brooks said. "He's here to inspect the simulation chamber and ask any questions about the test procedures." Morrison stepped forward. He was tall, with brown hair and sharp eyes. He moved with the controlled precision that HFY had noticed in all human military personnel. "Doctor, I've read the basic parameters. This is quite an impressive setup." "Thank you. Your species will be the 48th we've tested in the Class 13 protocol." Morrison looked through the glass at the simulation chamber. "What happened to the other 47? "They died," Velnara said before HFY could answer. "All of them, usually very quickly." Morrison nodded as if this was normal information. "I see. And you want to test humans because you think we'll die quickly too?" "We want to test humans because we need data on your species' survival capabilities," HFY explained. "The consortium uses this information to determine which worlds are safe for colonization." "That makes sense." Morrison walked closer to the control panels. "May I ask what the longest survival time has been?" 18 minutes, Quintel answered. "A Valdorian warrior caste member. They have natural armor and enhanced metabolism. And they died from?" "Toxic atmosphere exposure," Mordek said. "The armor protected against physical and thermal damage, but not chemical." Morrison asked several more technical questions. He wanted to know about the predator behaviors, the environmental hazards, and the simulation safety protocols. His questions were intelligent and detailed. HFY found himself impressed by the human's thoroughness. "When do we start?" Morrison asked finally. "Tomorrow morning," HFY replied. "You and Sergeant Hayes will have 6 hours in the simulation." Morrison smiled. It was a strange expression that HFY had learned meant humans were pleased or confident. "We're looking forward to it." After the humans left, the research team spent the evening running final checks on all systems. Everything had to be perfect. The Class 13 simulation had never failed to kill a test subject, but HFY wanted to be certain. As he worked late into the night, HFY wondered what would happen tomorrow. Would the humans die as quickly as everyone else? Would they last a few minutes longer? Or would they surprise him somehow? He didn't expect them to survive. Nobody could survive a Class 13 death world. It was mathematically impossible. But something about Lieutenant Morrison's calm confidence made HFY curious. Tomorrow would be very interesting. The next morning came too quickly for Dr. HFY. He had barely slept, thinking about all the ways the test could go wrong. Not wrong for the humans. He expected them to die like everyone else. Wrong for his equipment, his reputation, his career. "Lieutenant," Morrison and Sergeant Lisa Hayes arrived at exactly 0800 hours. Hayes was shorter than Morrison, with blonde hair tied back and the same calm military bearing. She carried a large bag of equipment that clinked softly when she walked. "Ready for your dip into hell?" Velnara asked. She was trying to make a joke, but her purple skin had turned darker with nervousness. "We've been in worse places," Hayes replied simply. HFY doubted that, but he said nothing. He led the humans to the preparation room where they could put on their environmental suits. The suits were standard consortium issue, good enough to keep someone alive in most Class 6 environments for a few hours. "Doctor," Morrison said as he checked his suit systems, "what's the record for longest survival in your Class 13 simulation?" 18 minutes, as we discussed yesterday. "Right? And what killed that subject?" "Chemical poisoning from the atmosphere." Morrison and Hayes looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Hayes nodded and pulled something from her equipment bag. "We brought our own air recyclers," she said, holding up two small devices. "Hope that's okay." HFY stared at the devices. They were clearly human technology, smaller and more efficient than anything the consortium used. "You expected the air to be poisonous?" "You told us it would be," Morrison said. 60% sulfur dioxide, 30% methane, 10% mixed toxins. Our recyclers can handle that for about 12 hours. In the control room, Quintel was running final system checks. All Predator programs active, environmental hazards at maximum parameters, safety protocols engaged. The safety protocols were important. If a test subject's life signs dropped too low, the simulation would shut down and medical teams would rush in. So far, they had never been fast enough to save anyone. "Human subjects are entering the chamber," Mordek announced, through the thick glass. HFY watched Morrison and Hayes walk into the simulation chamber. The room was empty now, just gray metal walls and floor. In 30 seconds, it would become a nightmare. "Initiating Class 13 protocol," HFY said, pressing the activation button. The chamber filled with swirling red mist. The temperature plunged to minus 180 degrees Celsius. Gravity increased to 3 times normal. The air became a toxic soup that would burn the lungs of most life forms. "Human life signs are stable," Quintel reported, surprise clear in his voice. On the main screen, thermal imaging showed the two humans moving calmly through the poisonous fog. They were not running or panicking. They were walking slowly, methodically, as if they were exploring a new park. "Temperature rising to plus 600 degrees, Velnara announced. The chamber turned from frozen wasteland to burning desert in seconds. The red mist became superheated steam. Most species would have been cooked alive. "Still stable," Quintel said. His gray fur was standing up with stress. Morrison's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. "Hayes, check. Your suit's cooling system, it's getting warm in here." "Already on it," Hayes replied. "Temperature regulation holding steady. Air recycler working fine." HFY leaned forward, staring at the screens. The humans were not just surviving. They were having a conversation about technical adjustments, like they were fixing a broken heater at home. "Releasing Predator Construct Alpha," he said, pressing another button. A shape materialized in the toxic mist. The crystalline hunter was 15 feet tall and moved with deadly grace. Its body was made of living crystal that could cut through most materials. Its electromagnetic sensors could track any living thing within a mile. The creature immediately locked onto the human life signs and began stalking toward them. "We've got company," Morrison said. Through the thermal imaging, HFY watched him point in the exact direction of the approaching predator. "I see it," Hayes replied. "Looks big and sharp, very sharp. Think it's natural or artificial?" "Artificial. Movement patterns are too perfect. It's a hunting program." HFY's hands froze over the control panel. The humans had identified the predator's artificial nature in less than 30 seconds. Most species took several minutes, if they lived that long. The crystalline hunter charged at the humans with blades extended. It moved faster than most creatures could react. Its crystal body reflected the chamber's hellish red light like a living weapon. Morrison and Hayes separated, moving in opposite directions. But they were not running away. They were circling the creature, studying its movements. Classic ambush. Predator behavior, Hayes observed, her voice still calm. Fast initial attack, then confusion when the target splits. Agreed. Watch the blade angles. They can't extend below 30 degrees from horizontal. The humans were analyzing their attacker, like scientists studying an interesting specimen. The crystalline hunter, confused by prey that would not run, began making wider sweeps with its blades. "Zexhai," Velnara whispered. "How are they so calm?" He had no answer. Every other species had screamed, panicked, or tried to fight desperately. The humans were treating this like a training exercise. Morrison suddenly stopped running and knelt down. He picked up something from the ground, a piece of metal debris that the simulation had scattered around the chamber. Haze. Thermal weak. Point at the base of the neck structure. Confirmed. Crystalline matrix is thinner there. Morrison threw the metal debris, not at the creature, but at a point on the wall behind it. When the metal hit, it created a small explosion of sparks, one of the chamber's automated hazard responses. The crystalline hunter spun toward the sound, exposing its back to Hayes. She immediately threw her own piece of debris at the creature's neck weak point. The impact shattered the crystal structure. The predator collapsed into a pile of glittering fragments. Threat eliminated, Morrison reported. Engaging exploration pattern beta. What? Quintel whispered. Is exploration pattern beta? They were about to find out. The humans began moving through the chamber with purpose, examining every surface, every hazard, every detail. Hayes collected samples of the toxic mist in small containers. Morrison sketched something on a waterproof pad. The acid pools over here are interesting, Hayes said. pH levels around 2.3, but rich in useful minerals. Noted. The rock formations provide good windbreaks, defensible positions. If we needed to establish a base camp. Base camp? Velnara squeaked. Morrison continued his observations. Gravity is heavy but manageable. The temperature swings are extreme but predictable. We could work with this environment. Work with it? Zexhai stared at the screens in disbelief. For the next 4 hours, the humans systematically explored every corner of the deadly simulation. They found and disabled 6 more predator constructs. They mapped safe routes through the acid fields. They identified which toxic gases could be filtered and which ones required closed system breathing. Hayes discovered that certain crystal formations could be harvested and used as cutting tools. Morrison found that the chamber's thermal vents could be used to generate power with the right equipment. This place has potential, Hayes said during their 5th hour in the simulation. With proper infrastructure, you could establish a mining operation here. The predator behavior is sophisticated but predictable, Morrison added. A small defensive perimeter would be sufficient to keep them out. In the control room, 4 alien scientists stared at their instruments in shocked silence. Every reading confirmed the same impossible truth. The humans were not just surviving the deadliest environment ever simulated, they were treating it like a real estate opportunity. Life signs remained stable, Quintel reported for the 20th time. Heart rate slightly elevated during predator encounters, but within normal human parameters. Normal? Velnara's voice cracked. How is any of this normal? As the 6-hour test period approached its end, Morrison and Hayes completed their survey of the chamber. They had examined every hazard, defeated every threat, and analyzed every resource. Control room, this is Morrison. The human's voice came through the speakers. We're ready to conclude the test. Understood, Zexhai replied automatically. His mind was still trying to process what he had witnessed. Before we finish, Hayes added, could we get copies of the environmental data? This simulation could be useful for training purposes. Training purposes? Zexhai repeated weakly. Yes, sir. This is good practice for extreme environment operations. Though honestly, it's a bit easier than some places we've been deployed. The simulation chamber powered down. The toxic mist cleared. The temperature returned to normal. The gravity reduced to standard levels. Morrison and Hayes walked out of the chamber, pulling off their helmets and breathing normally. They looked tired but satisfied, like workers finishing a productive day at the office. Thank you for the opportunity, Doctor, Morrison said. That was very educational. Educational, Zexhai repeated. Will there be other tests? Hayes asked hopefully. We'd be interested in trying more challenging scenarios. More challenging. They wanted more challenging scenarios. As the humans left to file their reports, Zexhai remained in the control room, staring at the now empty simulation chamber. In 47 previous tests, that chamber had killed everything they put in. Today, 2 humans had walked through it like they were touring a new neighborhood. Doctor, Velnara said quietly. What kind of world do humans come from? Zexhai did not answer. He was beginning to suspect that Earth was not the Class 7 world they thought it was. He was beginning to suspect that humanity's classification system was very different from everyone else's, and he was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, the Class 13 simulation was not nearly as deadly as they had believed. Dr. Zexhai did not sleep that night. He spent hours reviewing the test data, checking and rechecking every measurement. The numbers were impossible, but they were also completely accurate. The humans had survived 6 hours in conditions that killed most species in under 2 minutes. They had not just survived, they had explored, analyzed, and planned. They had treated the deadliest simulation in the galaxy like a job training exercise. I need answers, Zexhai muttered to himself as he sent an urgent message to the Human Integration Office. The reply came within an hour. Commander Brooks and Dr. Cole will arrive tomorrow morning to discuss the test results. Dr. Peter Cole was someone Zexhai had heard about but never met. He was Earth's leading expert on alien biology and environmental adaptation. If anyone could explain what had happened in the simulation chamber, it would be him. The next morning, Commander Brooks arrived with a tall, thin human male wearing a white laboratory coat. Dr. Cole had gray hair and tired eyes behind thick glasses. He carried an old-fashioned briefcase that looked like it had traveled across half the galaxy. Dr. Zexhai, Brooks said with her usual professional courtesy. Thank you for conducting this test. Our people found it very valuable. Valuable? Velnara blurted out. They almost died. Dr. Cole looked at her with mild confusion. Almost? Died? Our medical sensors showed they were never in any real danger. No real danger. Zexhai pulled up the test data on the main screen. Commander, your people were exposed to atmospheric pressure that should have crushed their lungs, temperatures that should have boiled their blood, toxic gases that should have dissolved their tissues, radiation levels that should have sterilized their cells. Dr. Cole adjusted his glasses and studied the numbers. I see. Yes, those are fairly extreme conditions. Fairly extreme? Quintel's gray fur was standing up again. Doctor, 47 different species have died in that simulation. Most of them died in under 2 minutes. Really? Dr. Cole looked genuinely surprised. What species were they? Mordek consulted his records with all 4 arms moving rapidly. Zellan warriors, Kef scouts, Valdorian armor cast, Tremec tunnel fighters, Alterian shock troops. Ah, Dr. Cole nodded. Well, that explains the confusion. Explains what? Zexhai demanded. Dr. Cole opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of documents. Doctor, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about Earth's environmental classification. He spread several photographs across the conference table. The images showed landscapes that made the alien scientists gasp. Volcanic fields with rivers of molten rock, ice sheets covering entire continents, Underwater canyons deeper than most planets' mountains were tall. These are all natural environments on Earth, Dr. Cole explained calmly. Morrison and Hayes have both trained in conditions similar to your simulation. Velnara picked up one photograph. It showed a human in a protective suit standing next to a pool of bubbling acid. This is real? Yellowstone National Park, Dr. Cole confirmed. The water temperature in those pools reaches 200 degrees Celsius. The water is so acidic it can dissolve metal. We take tourists there on weekends. Tourists? Zexai stared at the image. Commander Brooks pulled out her own set of documents. Doctor, I think we need to review Earth's planetary classification. According to our own geological surveys, Earth may have been incorrectly categorized. She handed him a report that made his hands shake. The document was titled Revised Environmental Assessment, Sol 3, Terra. According to this, Zexai read slowly, Earth's ocean depths reach pressures of over 1,000 atmospheres. Surface temperatures range from -89 to +58 degrees Celsius in natural environments. Atmospheric composition varies dramatically by altitude and location. That's just the basic stuff, Dr. Cole said cheerfully. We haven't even mentioned the volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, blizzards, or solar radiation exposure. Quintel was reading over Zexai's shoulder. Dr. Cole, this report suggests that parts of Earth experience radiation levels comparable to our Class 13 simulation. Oh yes, absolutely. There are several areas on Earth where you'd receive a lethal dose of radiation in a few hours without protection. People work there regularly with proper equipment. People work there? Velnara's voice was getting higher. Mining operations, research stations, power plants. It's just part of the job. Dr. Cole pulled out another photograph. This one showed a human in a thick suit standing on what looked like a frozen wasteland. The sky was dark, and strange colored lights danced across it. This is Antarctica, he explained. Temperatures regularly drop below -60 degrees Celsius. Winds reach over 200 kilometers per hour. The air is so dry it can freeze your lungs. We have permanent research bases there. Permanent? Zexai whispered. Oh, yes. People live and work there year-round. Raise families, go to school, have birthday parties. It's quite nice once you get used to it. Mordek was frantically calculating with all four arms. Dr. Cole, based on these environmental parameters, Earth should be classified as at least a Class 12 world. Possibly Class 15. That would make more sense, Dr. Cole agreed. Though honestly, we've never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. It's just home. Commander Brooks spread out more documents. These were military training records. Dr. Zexai, Morrison, and Hayes are standard infantry soldiers. They've both completed survival training in environments that match or exceed your simulation parameters. She pointed to one training record. Arctic survival course, 30 days in minus, 40-degree temperatures with minimal equipment. Hayes scored in the top 10% of her class. Another record, desert survival course, 14 days in 50-degree heat with limited water. Morrison completed the course while carrying a wounded teammate. These are normal training exercises? Velnara asked weakly. Basic requirements for military service, Brooks confirmed. Every human soldier must demonstrate survival capabilities in extreme environments. Dr. Cole was still looking at the Class 13 simulation data. I have to say, this is a very impressive training program you've developed, though I notice you're missing a few environmental factors that might make it more challenging. More challenging? Zexai could barely speak. Well, there's no seismic activity, no weather patterns, no biological contamination, no resource scarcity, and the predators, while sophisticated, follow fairly predictable behavioral programs. He pulled out a tablet and began making notes. If you want to create a truly challenging simulation for human subjects, you'd need to add some unpredictable elements. Maybe equipment failures, time pressure, conflicting objectives. Dr. Cole, Quintel said carefully, are you suggesting That our deadliest simulation is too easy for humans? Not too easy exactly, but it's more like a standard training exercise than an ultimate survival challenge. The room fell silent. 4 alien scientists stared at 2 humans who had just casually described conditions that would kill most galactic species as normal training exercises. "There's something else," Commander Brooks said quietly. "We need to discuss the implications of this test for galactic colonization efforts." She pulled out a star chart marked with different colored zones. "These are the worlds that the consortium has classified as uninhabitable, too dangerous for any known species to colonize." The chart showed hundreds of worlds marked in red, the galactic equivalent of certain death. How many of these worlds would humans consider habitable? Zexhai asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Dr. Cole studied the chart for several minutes. "Most of them, I'd say. Maybe 70 or 80%. Some would require infrastructure development, but that's true of any colony world." "Infrastructure development," Velnara repeated faintly. "Cities, farms, spaceports, the usual things. Nothing too complicated." Zexhai looked at the star chart again. Hundreds of worlds that the galaxy had written off as impossible death traps. Worlds that humans might consider prime real estate. "Dr. Cole," he said slowly, "what would you consider a truly dangerous world? What kind of environment would make humans think twice about colonization?" Dr. Cole considered this seriously. "Well, I suppose a world with no solid surface would be problematic, or one with no available water, extreme tidal forces that could tear apart infrastructure, maybe a world orbiting too close to an unstable star. Not environmental conditions? Environmental conditions can usually be managed with proper planning and equipment. It's the engineering challenges that would be really difficult." Commander Brooks closed her documents. "Dr. Zexhai, I think we need to have a broader conversation about human capabilities and galactic colonization policy." "Yes," Zexhai agreed, weakly. "Yes, I think we do." As the humans prepared to leave, Dr. Cole turned back with a smile. "Doctor, would it be possible to run another test? Maybe something a bit more challenging this time?" "More challenging?" Morrison and Hayes mentioned that they'd like to try a longer scenario, maybe something that requires them to actually accomplish objectives rather than just survive. After the humans left, the 4 alien scientists sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about environmental limits had just been turned upside down. "Velnara," Zexhai said finally, "I want you to run a complete analysis of human physiology and Earth's environmental data." "What am I looking for?" "I want to know if humans are actually as fragile as they look, or if we've been completely wrong about their capabilities." "And if we've been wrong?" Zexhai looked at the empty simulation chamber through the glass window. "Then we need to completely rethink what we know about survival, adaptation, and the limits of biological life." "And the humans' request for a more challenging test?" "Schedule it," Zexhai said. "I have a feeling we're going to learn a lot more about humanity very soon." 2 weeks passed before Dr. Zexhai heard from the humans again. 2 weeks of sleepless nights, endless calculations, and growing dread about what he might discover. Velnara's analysis of human physiology had been disturbing. Humans were not the fragile creatures they appeared to be. Their bones were denser than most species. Their muscles could function in extreme temperatures. Their organs could process toxins that would kill other life forms. But the most shocking discovery was about Earth itself. "Doctor," Velnara said, bringing him the final environmental report, "I think we made a serious mistake when we classified Earth as a Class 7 world." The report was thick with data that made Zexhai's head hurt. Atmospheric pressure variations, temperature extremes, radiation exposure levels, seismic activity measurements, volcanic eruptions, severe weather patterns. "Based on our updated analysis," Velnara continued, Earth should be classified as a Class 15 death world, maybe higher. Class 15, HFY repeated. That would make it one of the most dangerous worlds in the known galaxy. It gets worse. According to the geological data, Earth used to be even more dangerous. Early Earth had an atmosphere that would kill most known life forms instantly. Quintel looked up from his own research. I've been studying human evolution. They didn't just survive on a death world. They evolved from creatures that lived through the worst planetary conditions in galactic history. What do you mean? Mass extinctions, asteroid impacts, ice ages, volcanic periods that lasted millions of years. Everything that should have wiped out life on Earth just made it stronger. Mordek's 4 arms were moving frantically over his data tablets. I've run probability calculations. The odds of intelligent life evolving under such conditions are approximately 1 in 50 billion. Unless, HFY said slowly, those conditions were exactly what was needed to create a species like humanity. Before anyone could respond, Commander Brooks's message arrived. She wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss expanded testing protocols. She was bringing a larger team this time. The meeting took place in the facility's main conference room. Commander Brooks arrived with Dr. Cole and 2 new humans, Captain Ben Parker and Dr. Rachel Green. Captain Parker was a survival specialist, a human trained specifically to live in deadly environments. He was shorter than Morrison, but built like a solid block of muscle. His hands were covered in scars that suggested experience with dangerous situations. Dr. Green was an environmental scientist. She was young, with red hair and bright eyes that seemed to analyze everything around her. She carried equipment that HFY didn't recognize. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Commander Brooks began. Our initial test results were very valuable, but they raised some important questions. Questions about what? HFY asked. About the accuracy of your simulations, Dr. Cole replied. We want to make sure they properly represent real death world conditions. Captain Parker leaned forward. Doctor, with respect, your Class 13 simulation felt more like a training exercise than a survival challenge. Training exercise? Velnara squeaked. Don't get me wrong. It was well designed. Good environmental hazards. Solid predator programming. But it was missing the elements that make survival truly difficult. Dr. Green opened her equipment case and pulled out several devices. We'd like to help you design a more realistic scenario. Something that would actually challenge human capabilities. More realistic? Quintel's gray fur was standing up again. Let me explain, Dr. Green said, connecting one of her devices to the room's display system. Real survival situations aren't just about enduring harsh conditions. They're about accomplishing objectives while managing limited resources under time pressure. The display showed a complex flowchart. A proper survival scenario needs multiple variables, equipment failures, resource scarcity, competing priorities, unknown threats, and evolving challenges. Evolving challenges? HFY studied the flowchart. The environment should adapt to the subject's actions, Captain Parker explained. If they solve one problem, it should create new problems. If they find a safe area, something should threaten. That's safety. Dr. Cole pulled out more documents. We've prepared a proposal for what we're calling the Adaptive Extreme Protocol. It would be significantly more challenging than your current Class 13 simulation. The proposal made HFY's hands shake. The humans wanted to create a Class 16 environment, something beyond anything the consortium had ever attempted. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that they wanted the test subjects to succeed. Most of your current simulations are designed to kill the subjects, Dr. Green observed. That's scientifically interesting, but not practically useful. Practically useful? Mordek asked. Real death world colonization requires people to not just survive, but to build, grow, and thrive. A proper test should measure those capabilities. Captain Parker stood up and walked to the window overlooking the simulation chamber. Doctor, What's the longest anyone has survived in your Class 13 simulation? 6 hours, Zexhai replied. Morrison and Hayes. And what did they accomplish in those 6 hours? They explored, analyzed, mapped the environment. Exactly. They treated it like a job site. That's how humans approach dangerous environments, not as places to escape from, but as places to work in. Dr. Green activated another display. This one showed architectural plans. We propose a 30-day simulation where subjects must establish a functioning outpost, extract and process resources, defend against adaptive threats, and maintain operations while the environment actively tries to stop them. 30 days? Velnara whispered. That's long enough to test real survival skills, Captain Parker explained. Anyone can endure harsh conditions for a few hours. Building something permanent requires different capabilities. Dr. Cole leaned back in his chair. Of course, we understand if this is too ambitious for your current facility. Too ambitious? Zexhai felt a familiar stirring of scientific pride. Captain, this facility has created simulations that have killed representatives of 47 different species. Killing people is easy, Dr. Green said matter-of-factly. Making them succeed is the real challenge. Commander Brooks spread out more documents. We are also proposing to expand the test subject pool. Morrison and Hayes are good soldiers, but they're not specialists. She pointed to different files. We'd like to include Parker, who's trained for extreme environment survival, Green, who specializes in resource extraction and environmental adaptation, plus a few other specialists. How many humans? Quintel asked nervously. 6, initially. If the test goes well, we might expand to a full colony simulation with 20 or 30 subjects. 30 humans in a Death World simulation? Mordek's 4 arms stopped moving entirely. Think of it as a scientific opportunity, Dr. Cole said cheerfully. You could gather data on human group survival dynamics, resource management strategies, social organization under stress. Captain Parker returned to the table. There's one more thing. We want the simulation to be truly adaptive. Not just programmed responses, but genuine artificial intelligence that can learn and counter our strategies. Why? Zexhai asked. Because real death worlds don't follow predictable patterns. They change, evolve, surprise you. A proper simulation should do the same. Dr. Green closed her equipment case. Doctor, your current simulations test whether species can survive death worlds. Our proposal tests whether they can conquer them. Conquer them? Turn them into homes. That's what humans do with dangerous environments. We don't just survive in them, we make them work for us. The room fell silent. Zexhai looked around at his team. Velnara was pale purple with stress. Quintel's fur was completely standing up. Mordek's arms were twitching randomly. This adaptive extreme protocol, Zexhai said slowly, would be the most dangerous simulation ever attempted. Yes, Commander Brooks agreed. It could kill all 6 test subjects. It could, Captain Parker admitted, though we don't think it will. You don't think it will? Dr. Green smiled. Doctor, humans have been conquering death worlds for thousands of years. We call them colonization efforts. After the humans left, Zexhai remained in the conference room with his team. The proposal documents were spread across the table like evidence of an impossible crime. They're insane, Velnara whispered. Are they? Zexhai picked up one of the architectural plans. Or are we finally seeing what humanity is really capable of? Doctor, Quintel said carefully, if we build this simulation and the humans succeed, then we'll have to completely rethink our understanding of what's possible in extreme environments. And if they fail, then we'll know the limits of human adaptability. Mordek was calculating again. The probability of success in a Class 16 adaptive environment is mathematically negligible. For most species, Zexhai corrected, but humans aren't most species. He made his decision. We're going to build it." "Build what?" Velnara asked. "The Adaptive Extreme Protocol. We're going to create the most dangerous, most challenging, most impossible survival simulation ever attempted. And then?" Zexhai looked through the window at the empty simulation chamber. Soon it would house an environment so deadly that it could kill entire starship crews. And 6 humans were going to try to build a home in it. Then we're going to find out what humans are really made of. Building the Adaptive Extreme Protocol took 3 months. 3 months of sleepless nights, impossible engineering challenges, and the growing certainty that Dr. Zexhai was about to witness something that would change everything. The new simulation chamber was twice the size of the old one. Advanced AI systems controlled every aspect of the environment. Adaptive programming allowed the simulation to learn from the subject's actions and respond accordingly. It was the most sophisticated survival test ever created. "Final systems check complete," Velnara reported. Her purple skin had remained pale for weeks. "All environmental hazards are operating at Class 16 parameters." Zexhai reviewed the specifications one more time. Atmospheric pressure that could crush starships, temperatures that could melt steel, toxic clouds that could dissolve organic matter in seconds, gravity that could flatten most life forms, radiation levels that could sterilize entire worlds, and that was just the passive environment. The active threats were worse, predators that learned from each encounter, environmental hazards that adapted to countermeasures, resource scarcity that forced impossible choices, time pressure that made every decision critical. "The AI core is fully operational," Quintel announced. "It has access to combat strategies from over 200 species, environmental adaptation, data from 5,000 worlds, and behavioral prediction algorithms based on the consortium's entire xenobiological database." "In other words," Mordek said, "it knows every survival technique that has ever worked for any species in galactic history. And it's programmed to counter all of them," Zexhai added grimly. The human team arrived that morning. 6 specialists, the best Earth had to offer. Morrison and Hayes were back, along with Captain Parker and Dr. Green. The new additions were Sergeant Matt Cooper, a combat engineer, and Dr. Jenny Walsh, a medical officer who specialized in extreme environment physiology. "Impressive setup," Captain Parker said, looking at the massive simulation chamber through the observation windows. "How long did it take to build?" 3 months, Zexhai replied. "We had to develop entirely new technologies just to create some of the environmental hazards." Dr. Green was studying the technical specifications. Adaptive AI system, learning predator behaviors, evolving environmental challenges. "This is exactly what we asked for." "Dr. Zexhai," Commander Brooks said, "our people understand the risks. This simulation could kill them." "I know." Zexhai looked at the 6 humans. They appeared calm, confident, ready. "Are you certain you want to proceed?" Morrison smiled. "Doctor, we've been looking forward to this for months." The humans entered the simulation chamber carrying standard equipment, environmental suits, basic tools, emergency supplies. Nothing special. Nothing that would give them an obvious advantage. "Initiating Adaptive Extreme Protocol," Zexhai announced. The chamber transformed instantly. A hellish landscape materialized around the humans. Volcanic vents spewed toxic gases. Acid rain fell from a sky filled with electrical storms. The ground shook with constant seismic activity. Temperature and pressure readings climbed to levels that should have been instantly fatal. "Human life signs are stable," Quintel reported, his voice tight with stress. Through the observation screens, Zexhai watched the 6 humans assess their situation with professional calm. They were not panicking, not running, not showing any signs of fear. "Cooper, establish defensive perimeter." Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "Walsh, environmental assessment. Green, resource survey. Parker, threat analysis. Hayes, communications setup." Within minutes, the humans had organized themselves into an efficient team. Each person had specific responsibilities. Each person knew exactly what to do. First predator contact in Sector 7, the AI system announced. On the screens, HFY watched a pack of artificial creatures emerge from the toxic fog. These were not like the simple crystalline hunter from the Class 13 test. These predators were adaptive, intelligent, designed to learn from their prey's behavior. The creatures attacked with coordinated precision. They had studied the humans' movements and anticipated their responses. They should have been unstoppable. The humans eliminated them in under 5 minutes. How? Velnara whispered. They're using tactics the AI has never seen before, Mordek explained, his 4 arms moving frantically over his instruments. The AI expected them to fight or flee. Instead, they're manipulating the environment itself. Cooper had used his engineering skills to redirect a lava flow, trapping half the predator pack. Walsh had identified a chemical reaction between the creature's biology and the atmospheric toxins, creating an improvised weapon. The other humans had adapted their plan instantly, working together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Threat eliminated, Morrison reported. Beginning. Site survey for base establishment. Base establishment? HFY stared at the screens. It's been 30 minutes and they're already planning a base? But they were. Green had located mineral deposits that could be processed into building materials. Parker had identified defensible positions that could withstand the environment's worst hazards. Cooper was sketching construction plans that would allow them to build permanent structures. Day 1, objectives complete, Hayes announced 6 hours later. Perimeter secure. Resource. Sites identified, construction materials located, defensive positions established. They had done more in 6 hours than any species had accomplished in the entire history of the consortium's survival testing program. But this was only the beginning. Over the following days, HFY watched in growing amazement as the humans not only survived the impossible environment but began to thrive in it. They built shelters that withstood every hazard the simulation could create. They established resource extraction operations that turned toxic waste into useful materials. They domesticated some of the predatory creatures and created defenses that turned others away entirely. Day 7 report, Morrison announced. Base Alpha is fully operational. Power generation online, water purification systems functioning, food production established. We're ready to begin expansion operations. Expansion operations? Velnara's voice cracked. The humans had decided their base was too small. They wanted to build a second outpost on the other side of the simulation chamber. The AI is learning, Quintel reported on day 10. It's analyzing human behavior patterns and adapting its strategies accordingly. Good, HFY replied. Let's see how they handle genuine adaptive challenges. The AI began implementing new threats, predators that attacked in waves, environmental hazards that shifted location, resource deposits that became harder to access, weather patterns that specifically targeted human activities. The humans adapted faster than the AI could learn. Day 15 report, Green announced. We've established 3 functional outposts connected by secure transport routes. Resource production is exceeding consumption by 40%. We've identified potential expansion sites for when the test period ends. When the test period ends, they were already planning for after the simulation. Dr. Walsh's voice came through the communicators. We've noticed some interesting biological adaptations in the local ecosystem. With your permission, we'd like to begin a breeding program. A breeding program? HFY asked weakly. Some of these creatures could be very useful if properly domesticated. We think we can develop livestock variants that would thrive in similar environments. They were not just surviving a death world. They were not just conquering it. They were planning to improve it. By day 20, the humans had built what could only be described as a functioning city. They had manufacturing facilities, agricultural systems, power generation, water treatment, waste processing, and defensive networks. They had turned the deadliest environment in galactic history into a thriving colony. "The AI has given up," Mordek announced on day 25. Given up? It can't create challenges faster than the humans can solve them. Every adaptation just makes them stronger. On day 30, the final day of the test, Morrison submitted his mission report. It was 200 pages long and included detailed plans for expanding the colony to accommodate 10,000 residents. "Dr. Zexhai," Morrison said over the communicator, "we want to thank you for this opportunity. This has been the most valuable training exercise we've ever participated in." "Training exercise," Zexhai repeated numbly. "We'd like to request permission to continue the simulation indefinitely. Our engineers have identified several improvements that could be made to the base systems. The humans had spent 30 days in the most lethal environment ever created, and they wanted to stay longer." When the simulation finally ended, the 6 humans emerged from the chamber looking tired but satisfied. They had lost some weight and gained some scars, but they were all healthy, alert, and eager to discuss their experiences. "Doctor," Captain Parker said, "that was exactly the kind of challenge we were hoping for. When can we run it again?" Dr. Cole, who had arrived to observe the final days, was taking notes furiously. The resource management techniques they developed could revolutionize Death World colonization across the galaxy. Commander Brooks was more direct. "Dr. Zexhai, we'd like to discuss licensing this simulation technology for human colonial training programs." After the humans left, Zexhai sat alone in the control room, staring at the empty simulation chamber. The walls were scarred from 30 days of hell, but they were also marked with human construction. Anchor points for permanent structures, power conduits for electrical systems, drainage channels for water management. The humans had not just survived the adaptive extreme protocol, they had made it their home. "Doctor," Velnara said quietly, "what do we tell the consortium?" Zexhai looked at the test data one final time. 30 days of impossible conditions, 6 humans, 0 casualties, 1 functioning colony. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that we created the most dangerous survival simulation in galactic history, and the humans treated it like a construction project. And what does that mean?" Zexhai pulled up the galactic star charts, showing thousands of worlds marked in red as uninhabitable death worlds. "It means we're going to have to completely reclassify what we consider uninhabitable." He began typing his final report to the Galactic Research Consortium, the report that would change everything. Subject: reclassification of human survival capabilities and Death World colonization potential. Conclusion: humanity should not be classified as survivors of Death World conditions. They should be classified as the apex species that transforms Death Worlds into garden worlds through applied engineering and stubborn competence. Personal recommendation: any world that humanity expresses interest in colonizing should be immediately reclassified as habitable with infrastructure development. Final note: we simulated hell itself, and the humans asked if they could bring their families. Zexhai submitted the report and leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow the entire galaxy would know the truth about humanity. Today, he was just grateful to be their friend instead of their enemy.